Hey everybody, what's up? It's me, it's Pete, and I am back with another edition of Pete Plays Tyranny. Where we left off is we were talking to Tunon. We've just reached Tunon and saw him emit some judgment and had a conversation with him, and now we are learning about Tunon. So we're going to continue doing that. Fatebinder, you look as if you require my counsel. What is it you wish to know? I'm curious about you, Archon. Curiosity is not a trait that I encourage in my servants. Too often have I witnessed such activity leading down a path to lawlessness. However, if you feel that a better understanding of me will inform your work, then I will allow it. What would you know? What would you know? What would you know? Is that like a real phrase? Please let me know in the comments. What would you know instead of what would you like to know? Is that better? Good question. What's the deal with your mask? That seems like a question I'm not going to ask because I think that'll give wrath. And I am going to play that way a little bit. You know what? No, I've committed to seeing everything, even if it's going to bring wrath. This should be obvious to you by now, student. Since the answer is relevant to your duties, I will tolerate your ignorance and explain. The face is an uncontrollable warren of muscle spasms and reactionary contortions, sickening in its display of every petty bias. I cannot be trusted to audience or judge a dispute without navigating a gauntlet of subjectivity for all to witness. Go on. In my early days, before the Northern Empire spread to my lands, I fashioned the mask of listening out of stern, uncaring wood. This expression of endurance, patience, hearkens the testimony of my petitioners, taking in all evidence before weighing matters in their due course. Later in my career, Kairos herself gifted me the mask of resolve. You will find it almost identical to the mask of listening, save for the brow furrowed in contemplation and weighed down by the burden of judgment. This is the face that dispenses law, often the most exacting and unforgiving sort. I wore it when I brought Kairos' devastating judgment to the bastard city, and doubtless I will wear it again. God, what do you look like? That's going to bring more wrath. What do you look like underneath the masks? But we're seeing all dialogue. Oh, he didn't. Tunon hovers in silence, staring down at you. Your Honor. I got wrath too already. Oh my god, okay, it's fine. The shadows wreathing Tunon's feet whip about like waves in a storm, ebbing and flowing in your direction. An unmistakable air of danger fills the room. Oh, we gotta see the dialogue. This is the one rule. It's really taken me out of my role playing. It's great, Your Honor. Oh my god. Well, we're halfway to Wrath 3. The question is irrelevant. Justice is ageless, sexless, devoid of opinion other than the right or wrong. A face is extraneous to the function of law. Move on from this line of questioning, Fatebinder. It will do you no good. Oh my god, yes, but what do you look like? Do you even remember? This was the worst. I wore the mask of my office for centuries. Like my gavel, it is a symbol, a testament to my authority. There's no need to remove it. That doesn't answer my question. Wrath 4. Holy shit, that's bad. And yet it must suffice. You go too far, Fatebinder. You have earned the court's displeasure, and I will hear no more out of you. Dismissed. Tunon slams the pommel of his gavel to the ground. Oh, and I don't even think I'm gonna get to the rest of that stuff. Okay, maybe we will. Fatebinder, what do you want? Though his expression never changes, you feel the pressure of a concentrated glare from Tunon's mask. I can apologize. You surprised me with your impudent presumption. Certainly you challenge the court's opinion of you, and yet I will not hold you in my permanent contempt. In spite of the disrespect you showed this court, the right to cross-examine a testimony is yours by law, of which we are both subjects. For your own sake, I hope you show prudence in the future. Thank you, Your Honor. I have some questions. I think maybe we discovered a fatal flaw in these normal conversations that could greatly affect my playthrough. Regardless, we carry on. I wish to speak about matters of law. Then you are well situated, for my court is the legal heart of this corrupt and uncivilized realm. What matters draw your curiosity? You are already well versed in Kairos' laws, but I am happy to discuss the particulars. I wish to discuss Kairos' peace. The cornerstone of our wartime efforts, of course. Kairos' peace guarantees all willing supplicants under the Overlord's authority a place in her world. The exact wording of the bylaw is, "Your life is not yours to discard. The Overlord has plans for you." This extends to several spheres of influence. Among others, it grants protection to enemies who surrender in a time of war, and it forbids suicide. To dispense with the Overlord's vassal and property is prohibited. Remind me how the Overlord's name may be used? It is not forbidden to cross one's tongue with Kairos' name, but it behooves one to use caution and respect. The Overlord's name is not yours to give, whether to progency, product, location, or abstraction. Slander of the Overlord is punishable by death. There is only one Kairos, and her name is safeguarded. No one may say Kairos and have it obfuscated by a second meaning. Neither will her name be associated with trivialities. A gambler will not attribute his fortune to Kairos' luck, or his misfortune to Kairos' scorn. Such an association lowers the Overlord in the public estimate, and is rightly considered slander most foul. That's interesting. Easily put to death. That seems harsh. Seems really severe. Really harsh. Let us discuss the old walls. The old walls are forbidden, as are their contents and their denizens. Owning any item from the old walls is considered trespass, regardless of how it came into your possession. Mind that in the course of your travels. As the old walls extend across much of the tiers in Northern Empire alike, Kairos permits her servants to pass only where she has sculpted the landscape to permit traverse. Under no circumstances are you to enter or breach in the old walls, even for a task as innocent as crossing to the other side. If these restrictions seem too severe, I would remind you, they are for the protection of Kairos' subjects. The Overlord has no desire to see harm needlessly inflicted upon her loyal followers. Okay. Remind me of the Magician's Folly. Practitioners of the arcane arts must be sanctioned by one of Kairos' guilds, such as the Blood Chanters or Forgeborn. Rogue magicians with a tenuous grasp of unknown powers will not be tolerated. A sanctioned mage whose spellcasting causes damage to life or property is lawfully deemed innocent. As long as they practice their art in the service of Kairos, all is forgiven. So magic is illegal outside of when Kairos deems it okay. Cool. Speak of quotas and sharing. The harvest blooms and blights by the will of Kairos. In times of lean you will be fed. In times of wealth you will feed others. This law is a sizable category unto itself, serving many needs at once. Trade and tax being only two examples. The broadest intent of the law is to empower Kairos' subjects to care for their neighbor and expect care in return. You might take note of the law's application to trade. A merchant's right to peddle their wares is defined by permits granted annually. The regional authority has the right to decide if a merchant sells cabbage one year and sandals the next. Anyone breaking through their restrictions is subject to immediate forfeiture of all assets. You need not concern yourself over the nuances, at least until they apply to this contested realm in a time of peace. Okay. I'm curious about the restriction on forbidden knowledge. Kairos herself sets the standards of what can and cannot be known. These restrictions are rarely enforced, but they are worth taking into account. During the war, for example, Kairos deemed the knowledge of the Vellum Citadel taboo. No one may possess the wisdom of that fallen repository, save Kairos herself. Calling it taboo seems a bit like overkill, but to play Kairos' advocate, the world would hardly be safer if all had access to the lore of making poisons, or the art of arming brigands in fine bronze, said Lantry. This is for the protection of her subjects. Before the coming of Kairos during the ages of anarchy and discord, powerful knowledge in undeserving hands leveled empires without thought or mercy. Kairos has no desire to revisit those dark times. So that way of posing it makes Kairos seem like a benevolent, kind leader. Not sure if that's really what's happening, but maybe. Am I beholden to these laws? That should not be in question. We are all subjects of Kairos. Her laws define and regulate our very way of life. With that said, as an agent of law, you are granted more leeway than a soldier or citizen. You may find yourself compelled to commit morally questionable acts in the name of Kairos. If it serves the court's justice, much may be forgiven. If the court finds any of your actions suspect, we will summon you to answer for yourself. Your testimony will be heard and judgment rendered. You are exceedingly curious about the application of Kairos' law. I find it refreshing that you would seek my counsel, Fatebinder. Back to my previous questions. I have no more questions. Then be on your way. Right. So that could have gone better. Like, the whole thing probably could have gone better. But it did not, because we need to know. And actually, I found that line of questioning very good. Ooh, here's the thing. I just looked down in the lower left-hand corner, and we have a conversation with Baasvik available. Let's take it. Baasvik stares at you through his narrow eye slits, saying nothing at all. The only evidence that he still lives in the steam of heavy exhalations that escape the crack of his helm. Are you okay in there, Baasvik? He continues to stare, unmoving. Though you can't see his face, you get the impression that his mood has darkened even further. The stench that his armor exudes has intensified. Are you mad about something?
You betrayed Graven Ash, the Legion, and our northern countrymen. As far as I'm concerned, you are a traitor to this campaign.
Baasvik leans in close, looking ready to throttle you. I could say the voices of Narat made a better case. Accept it. It was my right as Tunon's Fatebinder to choose a side. Punch Baasvik in the gut, or stand down, soldier. I'm going to punch him in the gut. My guy would punch him in the gut. Every time, another rule. And I know this is bad role playing, but it's my role playing, and you guys can suck it. Every time I get a chance to punch somebody, I have to take it. Got some athletics experience, also some fear. He's fear level 3. Your fist connects with his armor with a hard clang. Baasvik looks down at you with as much confusion as disapproval.
I don't know what you expected would happen, but I'm only too pleased to disappoint you.
He turns away, shaking his head.
Let us be clear on one point. You have my blade, but my heart belongs to Ash and the North. I am a weapon bound to you only by duty, nothing more.
Sorry, Baasvik. Ooh, we have conversations available with Verse and with Lantry as well.
So, the Scarlet Chorus and Disfavored are at each other's throats. Can't say I didn't see that coming, but the Archons might have waited until one war was over before they started another.
Do you think I made the right decision, or their war doesn't interest me? I'm going to say their war doesn't interest me. I think my character would be confident in his decision.
Funny sentiment, considering you're in the center of it. Not that I'm judging. I'll say this much. Our time together is anything but dull. My blades are yours for as long as you'll have me.
Noted. I have questions for you. I would like to discuss your apparent connection with Barrick. I could talk to both of it. I think I'm going to ask them both why they fight well together.
Thought has crossed my mind from time to time. During the many battles of the conquest, we found ourselves standing back to back with enemies on all sides on more than one occasion.
That's interesting.
The big guy here is as useless as an empty scabbard without his phalanx to keep him alive, but I move fast enough to compensate for it. And it's nice having a living wall of rusted iron I can use for cover.
How do you think this is possible?
I would suggest that our fighting styles complement each other, but they do not. I would suggest that we get along, but we do not. We don't even finish each other's
sentences. Okay, that was strange. Did you hear that?
That seemed forced.
The next time I catch a whiff of Barrick's meaning, I'm keeping my mouth shut.
I want you two to train together.
Absolutely not. Our fighting styles are incompatible, and any disfavored lieutenant will tell you not to join at the hip soldiers who can't stomach each other.
I'm inclined to agree. If you want to pair up fighters, there has to be some great passion or magnetism between them. We don't have it.
I could say I could command you to train together. I could use subterfuge to bluff. And say if neither of you are up to the challenge, then I won't force the matter. That seems more like reverse psychology than it does bluffing. But, okay. Why won't you give it a shot, or we can discuss this again later. If neither of you is up to the I'm going to use subterfuge.
A valiant attempt, but I'm not as easily swayed
Darn
by
it.
your courtly tongue.
Neither am I. At least, not in this context.
Why won't you give it a shot?
Because I don't want to covers it pretty well. Training alongside this self-important braggart is likely to sap whatever patience I have left.
That's a shame, Verse. He's a nice guy.
To serve the best interests of the war, but we are accustomed to handling ourselves as individuals rather than as a pair.
I could command you to train together. Yeah, I gotta say it.
Sorry, Fatebinder, but no. It's a fair idea, but we would likely just kill each other for your troubles.
Agreed. It's not happening in this lifetime, but I like your passion.
I tried. We also have discussion available with Lantry.
At least in theory, I'm supposed to be observing history and not getting myself wrapped into it. All the same, this is the thrill of a lifetime. Rarely does one stand so close to monumental moments in the making. For the moment, the Scarlet Chorus could be considered an ally. Let us hope the Archon of Secrets continues to find you entertaining enough to remain friends. The disfavored, on the other hand, will be a certain threat. The Civil War has removed Ash's pretense to play well with others. So, I must ask, are you planning on taking sides in the Civil War? Or do you have other plans?
I could say I'll hunt with the Scarlet Chorus, which is just definitive. I'm with the Scarlet Chorus. I could say for so long as it suits my purposes, I will work with the Scarlet Chorus. I have my own little corner of the tiers now. My plans are entirely my own, or I am a servant of the Archon of Justice. That much has not changed. I'm going to hunt with the Scarlet Chorus.
Raven Ash knows more about war. I contend the Voices of Narad knows more about victory. The Scarlet Chorus has grown with each passing year.
Oh, missing voice acting. In many ways, the end of the conquest is largely an abstraction. Eventually the tears will be those who have joined the chorus and the corpses of those who refused. Best to be on the living side of that future.
Your fatalism does you credit, Scholar. Doesn't it feel good to be on the winning side for a change?
Whatever you do next, consider that many eyes will be upon you. For you have both delivered and taken away the Overlord's edicts, and few will know how to make sense of the latter. You are an exception the Archons cannot afford to ignore. They will likely aim to control or destroy you.
Have a moment? Let's talk. Have you heard of edicts being broken before? Because the other one seems like it'll take me to more questions.
Edicts were either worded to end in a manner of the overlord's choosing, or the edicts have simply continued in perpetuity. That's not to say there haven't been stories of broken edicts. They're just uncommon. The oldest is, I think, Goldbraith and the Edict of Sorrows, and that tale dates back to around the year 110. Aside from you, the most recent was the Edict of Twisting Grasses, back in 380. In all these stories, Kairos' edict very clearly gives its victim a single way to escape, and someone manages it. What's never happened is the pure abatement of an edict, like using a spell of warding or cancellation.
Have a moment? Let's talk further. So, what's on your mind? Did you want to discuss matters of the present, or would you prefer a more scholarly rant? Let us discuss current matters.
Of course. How can I help?
What are your thoughts on our traveling
Are
associates?
you asking for an objective assessment? Or is this your way of saying you want to gossip?
Barrick, what do you make of
You
him?
must have some leverage over him, as I would have thought he'd been into a disfavored trap long ago. Or maybe the Legion is just that polite? I must admit, I am completely fascinated by his predicament. Ever tried diagramming the articulations of his armor? Don't. It'll only lead to madness and ruination.
Thoughts on verse?
I know little of swordplay, and couldn't work a curve and arrow to save my life. I can't really comment on the lady.
Lady? You're just afraid to talk in front of me, clear as day. Your sweat is easier to read than your ink scribbles.
No, not at all. I just don't know how to comment on a warrior's worth, that's all.
Spare me your blather.
Verse pauses to read Lantry's body language.
Huh. Think that, do you? Didn't know you had such swollen hope for me.
No need to keep secrets, Lantry.
Most fascinating specimen. I think she has great potential. Dangerous amount of potential, to be blunt. The Scarlet Furies are the fighting elite of the Scarlet Chorus, and that means floating to the top of a sea of blood and chop. We should consider ourselves lucky to have her on our side, with her weapons usually pointed away from us.
Yes. What do you make of Ebb?
Sidecasters stay underwater. Kairos did the Tears a favor by erasing those moon howlers from history. A shame one of them escaped justice. She has her uses, as does any thug or brigand. I just hope you have some means of keeping her in control the day she thinks herself strong enough to take us.
Speak of something else. I have some questions for
Nothing
you.
if not a semi-reliable font of knowledge. What did you want to discuss?
I'd like to know more about you. Huh. I thought I already asked him all these questions.
Not a semi-reliable font of knowledge. What did you want to discuss?
Well, where are we at? Yep. This is a entirely talking episode, so sit back, relax, and enjoy. What's your story? Tell me the origins of Lantry. Someday, someone half your age will ask you to sum up your life, and you'll realize what an odious request that is. Well, where to start? I grew up in Sunder. I was born right after the independence from the realm of Stalwart. So yeah, do the math and you'll realize I'm old. My parents were harbor hands. My mother never returned from a voyage, and my father lost his hand to infection and decided to sell me to the school of ink and quills. Remain silent. As a novice, I was assigned to the dovecotes, where I learned how to raise and groom birds to carry missives, and most of my early tomes are on that subject. 10 years and several tomes later, someone decided I was ready to be welcome into the inner circle and shown the ways of magic. And since then, I've spent a great deal of time in field study, which I suppose readied me for life after the fall of the Vellum Citadel. Well, as much as anything could ready one for the strangeness of these days. Were you born Lantry, or did you take that name on joining the school of ink and quill? Most sages take a new name when they join the school, but for me the transition was difficult at first. I stuck to my old commoner name and then just never got around to picking some highfalutin name like Sage Apophysis or Sage Dangling Particle. Is this your true skein? Did you always want to be a sage? I cannot imagine doing anything different. I suppose in my youngest days I yearned for battle and glory like most boys I knew. Having now seen how short a soldier's life can be, I look back on that old calling, that old mindset, and laugh. So really, what's your story? What do you mean by that? Ooh, I got subterfuge. I know you're smarter than you act. Extend me the same courtesy. Glare silently, or let's speak of something else. Let's use subterfuge. I gained 10 subterfuge skill experience. Lantry strokes his beard, leaving flecks of sepia among his white whiskers. I was on the take from the voices of Neyrat, or at least an agent of his sent me to the school of ink and quill 30 years back. It'd be years later until I made the connection to the Archon. Most people think the war began 3 years ago, but the voices of Neyrat had his hands in things sooner than that. I was part of that early invasion. An eager kid happy to accept a 30-year assignment that comes with an education. Cause say, what else aren't you telling me? So you advocating surrender to Kairos was the end of your long plan. Thank you for telling me. Now no more secrets understood, or I am dreadfully unamused by this. Thank you for telling me. Now no more secrets understood. I'm gaining loyalty with Lantry. I will endeavor to earn your trust as best I can. Sorry to have given you reason for doubt. What else aren't you telling me? Well, I should admit I might have been taking an interest in your history since I learned about your proclamation of the Edict of Storms. In truth, I am deeply curious about any who have lived as vessels to Kairos. Kairos' most supreme magic. When I heard you were proclaiming a second edict, I had to find a way for us to meet. Being tied up in a prisoner camp was not the intended plan. So you advocating surrender to Kairos was the end of your long plan. Yes and no. When I first left, I was just happy to be getting educated by the sages on someone else's rings, and my orders were simply to listen and report. As the time drew near, my commands were to win them over, a little at a time, to the notion of surrender. But I failed. The elders of the school grew defiant, and the militant minds won out. These are tearsmen, after all. I didn't deliver the surrender, and it took the Overlord's edict to end what I was sent to do. Let's speak of something else. He said the same thing again. You mentioned raising birds earlier. Think you'll go back to doing that? At some point, yes. Good birds are needed to keep the missives moving through the tiers. I set all my best birds to flight before the edict. Turn of phrase, constant call, and the rest. They're out there somewhere, and maybe when this is over, I'll summon them back and start a new dovecote. How do you feel about Kairos? How can I not help but find him to be the most captivating person alive? The man has bent empires, claimed continents. Where he goes, history follows. I won't deny he has killed millions, at least, but I contend more would have died in petty wars across Terratus in the void of Kairos. I've seen what tiny despots, merchant cabals, and mage guilds can inflict in the names of all sorts of righteous causes. I will take the rule of Kairos over the tyranny of every idiot on Terratus. Let's speak about something else.
Nothing if not a semi-reliable font of knowledge. What did you want to discuss?
Let's talk about arcane matters.
And I'd be happy to oblige. Ever since the fall of the Vellum Citadel, it is hard to find someone with whom I can discuss such things.
What do you know of Kairos' edicts? Kairos has cast many over the ages, and to my knowledge has never worded two edicts exactly the same. Edicts defy our understanding of magic. Kairos' magic works over vast distances, over indefinite durations, and no archon or mere mage can counter the force of an edict. What can you tell of edicts in general? I explain it to my students like this. A spell is to an edict as a drop of rain is to a hurricane. Edicts and spells are both magical cantrips, but differ in intensity by orders of magnitude. Edicts are almost commands to Terratus that must be carried out until the instructions allow for the magic to end. If Kairos wants a plague until next Judge's Day, expect copious buboes until next Judge's Day. Nothing has ever dispelled an edict. Nothing outside of the edict's own sunset clause, as I like to think of them. I'm curious about a specific edict. Of course, ask away. Any thoughts on the Edict of Execution cast on the Vendrian's Valley? It seems like the Archons were about to kill each other, and the threat of mutual destruction was about all Kairos had left. I imagine fear is the only way to get someone like the Voices of Neyrat to follow orders, and the Edict certainly did whip them into action. Of course, ask away. The transitions are getting rough. What do you know of the Edict of Stone? The Edict of Stone ravaged the realm of Azure. The upheaval of earth and rock turned the rolling plains into a craggy steppe known as the Stone Sea. Since the edict was directed at the traitorous Archon of Stone, it would seem the upheaval of Azure was a secondary consequence, though I imagine little of what Kairos does is unintentional. What do you know of the Edict of Fire? I was there when the ground erupted in fire, and I don't think I remember ever being as terrified as I was that day. If I hadn't woken early, I'd likely have perished in my own sleep, or awoken to the experience of being immolated. I have very conflicted feelings about this matter. The School of Ink and Quill had every opportunity to surrender. The leadership chose to stand against the most powerful force on Terratus. While this is all very terrible, it was entirely preventable. You'll think me crazy, but there's a part of me saddened I lived through an Edict of Fire. Kairos has used this before. I figure if I'm going to have years taken off my life fleeing an edict, would have been nice if it was a historical first. That's pretty funny. Can you tell me of the Edict of Storms? I would think you know more than most on the subject. I watched with great interest when it happened. But fleeing the Edict of Fire was a more pressing concern. The Edict of Storms turned the once forested lands of Stalwart into a windswept wasteland. They call it the Blade Grave now, since only the iron and bronze armaments remain. Hurricane breezes, rust winds, and relentless lightning have destroyed the housing and farmlands. Let's speak of something else. Yep. He already said that edict line. Do edicts work on the same arcane principles as spellcraft and other magic? Can't imagine they do.
Strongest manifestation of magic we know, and they seem to violate all other lesser phenomena. No dispel cantrip has ever dented or abated an edict. Even archons with powers of great durability cannot shrug off their effects. Just look at Cairn. Now, what I find curious, edicts can flex a little, or so my studies suggest this is the case. Take the Edict of Storms. While the day it was proclaimed was the most violent, the actual radius of the storm has changed over time. But most will have none of my hypotheses on this matter.
Fine, I'll take the bait. What's your conjecture about edicts?
So, in my studies, some edicts resolve some problem of the overlords and then vanish into history. But the edicts that linger around, Almost all of them begin to widen. Their effects become more intense. Here's the intriguing part. The older the edict, and the more that's written about it, the more the reports of that edict get more dire over time.
That's interesting. I wonder if that'll mean something later. So the older the edict and the more that's written about it, the more the reports of that edict get more dire over time. Now, does he mean... Yeah. Like, I'm thinking number one. That's how legends work. Each generation tells them bigger. Perhaps the edicts have a life of their own once set in motion. And edicts never seem to vanish over time. Or I think you're talking about things you don't understand. I think I'll go with number one. That's how legends work.
True, I could just be overreacting to sloppy record keeping, but my hunch is that there's some correlation going on here.
Huh.
I contend that edicts are powered by fear. Fear of Kairos helps fuel the casting, and fear of the edict feeds the magic, sustaining it, and if enough people fear it, even growing it a bit.
Huh. Rule by fear is certainly Kairos' way. That's possible. Or edicts just feeds off the landscape once set in motion. Look at what has become of Azur and Stalwart. Or what have others said of this theory of yours? Oh, that's what others have said.
The other sages have had little to comment on the subject. Most found the study of Kairos to be bad luck for whatever reason.
Huh.
Intellectual honesty demands that I study the matter more. If I'm correct, the more people fear and obsess over an edict, the stronger it becomes. Anyway, another study for another time.
That's interesting.
And I'd be happy to oblige. Ever since the fall of the Vellum Citadel, it is hard to find someone with whom I can discuss such things.
What do you know of the magic of the Archons? I've studied many of the Archons for many years. Compared to the other sages, I'm an expert on the subject. Which is sad, because I feel like I've still so much to learn. How does the magic of Archons work? The Archons all have magical powers that are intuitive. When the voice of Nayrat pulls out someone's mind, or Graven Ash protects his soldiers, that magic is an assigned spell or ritual. To them, it's closer to flexing one's hand. Archons are the... what's the word for it? Axiom of magic, the root of magic. Spell pioneers. I'm sure this analogy is off in many ways, but I see the Archons as the mothers of original magic, and everyone else is just imitating them. Let's read about that. While every guild or school of magic will ascribe different name to the theory, all mages inevitably stumble upon an inescapable fact. Only the Archons can will magic into being. Everyone else can only cast magic by invoking the sigil of an Archon that has come before. None know how the Archons do their magic. It seems to be different with each Archon. But theory suggests that once an Archon starts to invoke their powers, anyone else who comes after that Archon could, with the proper knowledge, tap into that power with the proper sigil and know-how. This observed law has given rise to a common question from young students. Could one guess at a sigil of an Archon not yet born, or not remembered by history, or simply unknown to the caster, and successfully cast a spell? Experienced mystics would tell you this is impossible, for they know that it's not enough to just mimic the gestures of a sigil. One must have willful, conscious knowledge of the Archon and the intended power being channeled. So they have kind of something outside of normal spellcasters. To confuse things a bit, some Archons learn to cast other spells in the same fashion as us lesser mages. If you are as important as an Archon, you learn quick that all knowledge is power. I've studied many Archons for many years. Compared to the other sages, I'm an expert on the subject, which is sad, because I feel like I've so much to learn. Are all Archons loyal to Kairos? Officially, yes. In actuality, no. Those with the true gift for magic always come to the attention of Kairos. A few manage to evade attention for a bit. The School of Tides was founded by one such uncontrollable, but these are history's exceptions. When we write biographies of the Archons, we often refer to them as exarchs in their formative years before stepping into their prime. But officially, Kairos is supposed to grant all titles of Archon. It's quite the faux pas to self-appellate. How was an Archon born or bred? I think we all dream of one day waking up and being an Archon. Give some of the madmen and loons that have exhibited mystical greatness. It can seem unfair that the rest of us can't do it. I can say with confidence, Archons aren't born, they become. Archon Graven Ash is a good study of this. Before he was the Archon of War, he was a successful commander, each victory more daring and glorious than the next. Somewhere along the way, his leadership took on mystical qualities. The Graven Ash we know today can reach out and protect his soldiers from harm. But maybe at first he could just protect those near him. I wouldn't know for certain, but all will attest that he didn't have this power his whole life. Let's speak of something else.
And I'd be happy to oblige. Ever since the fall of the Vellum Citadel, it is hard to find someone with whom I can discuss such things.
What do you know of spellcraft?
I've forgotten more than most bloodchanters have ever learned. What do you want to know?
Can you teach me anything?
I think you know all I can teach you.
Alright. What sort of magic do the sages teach you? Sage Sindon tutored me in the traditional sigils, those of preservation, concealment, and healing, as derived from the bygone archons of Theravis, Fading Wrath, and the Orphan Midwife. The preservation magic is largely functional, sealing parchment, binding books, that sort of thing. All of us chroniclers learn concealment magic, as our ideal method would be to study the events without contaminating the decisions being made. As for the healing magic, many of us modern sages study this a great deal. The school has a shoddy reputation among the common folk. I figure if they knew us as healers and caregivers, maybe we start to change opinions. Healing. Now that's a noble craft to study. Or I could say, so, you study magic to spy on people? Or they didn't teach you to conjure lightning or something fun? Sounds boring. Those are both dumb. My guy's not dumb. True, but given how accident-prone I can be, I think the person that benefits most from my magic is me. But certainly the most gratifying spells I know are the ones that ease pain and suffering. They make me feel slightly useful. What can you tell me about signing magic? Scholars don't have a good word for what Archons do when they cast magic. Couldn't tell you how Graven Ash casts his protection over his soldiers, nor would I know how Bleeding Mark consciously decides to move through a shadow. But when us mere mages want to cast a spell, we do so by signing the sigil of an Archon that previously discovered the magical phenomenon in question. It's debated whether Archons create new magic or just discover magic that was waiting for us. But such questions seem impossible to answer while sober. Is that it? Don't I have more stuff I could ask him? I'm not done with you, Lantry.
One moment, my friend. Just let me finish this thought.
Ending his note with a flourish, Lantry licks the tip of a quill, pausing to taste it a second and third time before tucking a pen holster on his sleeve. I have a lot of loyalty with Lantry. Almost tier 5. Discuss matter of present, or prefer a more scholarly rant. I have some questions for you.
Not a semi-reliable font of knowledge. What did you want to discuss?
I have questions about our allies and enemies.
You might want to ask a more soldierly type about the armies, but do you want to talk about the Archons or other mages?
I wanted to ask you about the Archons. I know much of such luminaries, so I am careful with my words. But ask, if you must. Tell me about Graven Ash, the Archon of War.
He served with Kairos for a mere century, but he has been a reliable general and level-headed warlord. Certainly when compared to some of the more bloodthirsty Archons to serve under Kairos. I'm not saying the disfavored are merciful. I'm just saying I've read the stories of the Archon of Blood and know it could be worse. I know Graven Ash can defend his soldiers from far away. Ash's Aegis is the term us Arconophiles have taken to calling it. Not surprisingly, Graven Ash is beloved by his troops. I mean, if Tunon could mystically protect you from cudgels and sharp sticks from leagues away, you'd like him more.
Tell me about the voices of Nayrat. No voice for this one. It's weird how they choose their voice stuff and non-voice stuff. Oh, sorry. The voices of Nayrat is one of Kairos' most dangerous and unpredictable servants. He can pull memories, whole personalities, if you believe some reports, from his victims, and over time, this has created a single Archon with the knowledge of countless lifetimes. He and I were in written contact as part of the taking of the Vellum Citadel. Though I exchanged very few words with him, it was readily apparent that the voice of Nayrat doesn't see people, he sees uses. I know much of such luminaries, so I'm careful with my words, but I ask if you must. What do you know of Tunon? First, I suppose I should ask you what you know. Tunon is a puppet with masks. His time will come. He is true to his core mission. He is fair and just. Fate binders do not discuss matters to outsiders. He is true to his core mission. He is fair and just. I don't know if I believe that. Fair and just by your measure, that is. Tunon Archon of Justice exists in text spanning back hundreds of years. I can't say I know how he came to be the Overlord's adjudicator. Maybe you know that one. But he oversaw the conquest of the Tundra Sovereigns, and they bowed to Kairos in the year of 83. Okay, know anything about Bleeding Mark? Very little. His name is not printed in many texts. I know that he is sworn to Tunon and acts as his assassin. I know he goes back a long ways, though. I've assumed he's served Kairos about as long as Tunon, give or take. What about Siren, the Archon of Song?
Not the youngest Archon in history, but certainly one of the younger, and history has yet to write much about her. And if I happen to be the first to write about her, well, that will look nice for my legacy.
Okay. Do you speak to Karen? Do you know Karen, Archon of Stone? Of him I know very little. I believe he was the wild man of the hills that Graven Ash subdued in 402. But only one source suggests that link. He was famous for being, well, a big sour jerk. Seems he let his mouth run off about Kairos, and that was the end of his story. Let's speak of something else. I have some questions for you.
I am nothing if not a semi-reliable font of knowledge.
What can you...
What did you want to discuss?
What can you, tell me of the School of Ink and Quill?
You mean what's left of them? What would you like to know?
What's the core philosophy?
The sages are archivists, academicians, and arcanists. Our mission is to preserve the knowledge of today for the good of tomorrow. Though we are known for our magic, few realize that most sages concern themselves with scribal work. Only a select few have the talent or focus to work the sigils. Each sage benefited from the scrolls of learning that came before him. And so, each sage must repay this boon by gathering, authoring, or translating new texts to the stacks. But all that's a bit generous. It's no secret that the sages were far more happy to add knowledge than to share it.
So they were very closed off and weren't very forthcoming with the massive amounts of knowledge they were gaining. Okay. Why did the sages resist Kairos?
Why, indeed. As historians, it is our place to document, not direct. Let others rage and resist. Ours is the duty to record. The decision to defy Kairos was not unanimous, nor one decided upon lightly. The laws of Kairos would forbid much of the knowledge contained in the Vellum Citadel. The elder sages feared, rightly perhaps, that the Overlord would put an end to our tradition of stockpiling knowledge. The Battle of the Vellum Citadel was a battle to preserve knowledge. But our actions will be remembered as treason against the will of Kairos.
That's sad. That's a really negative effect of this whole thing is Kairos really, like, destroyed the greatest academic minds in the tiers. Now I feel bad.
Their days to a generation after 5 Wives, when the first settlers moved west. The Vellum Citadel began as a scholastic retreat, slowly blossoming into the finest library in the continent across the generations.
The sages trace their days to a generation after 5 Wives, when the settlers first moved to the west. Let's read about that. The 5 Wives is the name for both the historic landfall of seafaring human settlers on the tiers, as well as the name for the archipelago where the first, now largely abandoned, settlements were founded. In centuries past, the historic event was known more properly as the 5 Wives and the 7 Husbands. For as the story goes, 7 ships made landfall, and after 2 seasons of difficult living, the 7 husbands got back on their boats and see what else was nearby, and all perished. Many suggest this is just a parable used to explain the gender roles of land ownership and admiralty in the tiers, but the nobility take the origin story quite seriously. And nearly every noble house in the tiers has a family mythology linking them back to these 5 fabled matriarchs. Okay.
The centuries fly by, and suddenly...
That's a cool detail.
The Citadel is the definitive archive in the tiers. The sages branched out into carrying missives for wealthy clients, training noble children to read. The peasants may have feared us, but we remained useful enough to the kings and queens of the tiers to avoid war. When Kairos came to the tiers, that's when our hubris came back to haunt us. The elder sages, the other elder sages, not I, believed our spellcraft was enough to ward off any siege. Well, we know how that turned out.
They probably got him, and Kairos was too powerful.
Traditionally, we
should have known about edicts, you idiots.
And archive, so that means magic of concealment and protection. But in truth, we have amassed a great wealth of knowledge. Before the Vellum Citadel fell, any given subject of magic had at least one sage practicing it.
That's cool.
I am nothing if not a semi-reliable font of knowledge. What did you want to discuss?
So they say sages know all sorts of things.
I know everything, except for who's been saying that. What's on your mind?
Can you teach me something about history?
I'm flattered you think me that wise, but unless you are enthralled by migration observations and titillated by triangle ratios, I think I'd bore you silly.
I do not have a good requirement there. I do not have the fear. I don't know what the fear option could be for Lantry, but he's too loyal to me. Well, how about lore? What better tangent than triangles?
Ask me again when we're somewhere quiet. Maybe back at the spire.
Interesting. Know anything about the Bane? A shame Sage Cloven Claws was reduced to a pile of ash. Man knew all that's been written on the subject. Most of what we know is summed up in the name. The full term for them is Mage Bane, and there's a good reason for it. They'll prey on anything that moves, but they'll show favoritism towards magically active humans. Tell me about the Wisps. Wisps are largely inconsequential by themselves. Hardly the menace most associate with the Bane. But these glowing little creatures often follow in the wake of Scourges or other larger Bane, and that can make them a real danger. What do you know of the Scourges? Writhing masses of sharpened limbs, and quiet as a shadow, Scourges are the most frequently observed type of Bane. Not sure if they're the most numerous or just the most likely to attack. I kind of want to see some of these creatures. I hope we run into them. What about Havocs? Havocs are notable for being territorial. By all accounts, they stick to a chosen location and lurk. And lurk. If you see one, common wisdom is to run. It'll give up chase eventually, when you find the edge of its home. Know anything about the Malices? Most troublesome of the Magebane are the malices. Though I've never experienced it, I'm told a malice can take hold of your waking self, leave you trapped in a dream while it puppets you. If evidence of these creatures didn't predate Kairos, I'd think the Overlord the only creature powerful and cruel enough to breed the malice. Ooh, those are creepy. Do you know where these creatures come from? They seem to breed in the old walls, or at least that is where they exist in the highest concentration. But there seemed to be no social interaction amongst the Bane and no logical mechanism of grinding their privates to make little Banes. Well, let's speak of something else.
I know everything, except for who's been saying that. What's on your mind?
Know anything about the Beastmen?
My knowledge is largely academic, not to be mistaken for practical.
What are their
The
origins?
earliest settlers made note of the Beastmen, so they were here before us, but not before the older realms. By all accounts, the tribes do not have record of a time before the old walls. So, the logical conclusion is that they arrived after the old realms, but before Five Wives.
What of the tribes?
There have been thousands of tribes throughout history. Most dissolve within acquirement's lifespan. The stronger females branch off and make their own tribes with tougher names. Then the King of Azure rounds you up and puts you to work. The Stonestalkers are the most powerful of remaining tribes, thriving now that Azure has fallen. As for the rest, the old talons of Frozen Cloud, the Trollhooks, the Kolakar, the Kapanas, the Jaw Snap, all gone, I think. And then there's the Shadow Hunters. They're all but extinct.
Huh. So Beastmen cannot stay well organized. They are very scattershot, very poor at what they do. But they're probably pretty powerful when they're well organized. So I'd fear the biggest group.
Live like beasts. Clothing and artifice seem to have little value to them, whereas rutting and killing are the reason they wake in the morning. But it would be a mistake to think them stupid. Ask any tamer and they'll tell you some stories of their cunning. The beasts are wanting in patience and diplomacy, but they are a clever bunch.
Huh. Where do their loyalties rest?
You'd want to ask the authority, Sage Quillborn. She lived with the Kolakar for a few span back in 404. Some truly fascinating findings. She noted that every successful tribe has a singular female leader. It's Prima. She noted that beastmen show fluid loyalty to new matrons. They adapt well to changing leaders, but they never change the relatively simple but strict hierarchical model. Few beastmen have accepted fealty to Kairos. It would seem the notion of bowing to a person you have not seen in the flesh is insanity. This inability to bow to the Overlord will no doubt doom the species, though Kairos does not suffer such token insults.
Let's speak of something
I know
else.
everything, except for who's been saying that. What's on your mind?
That's all for now. Any more questions I could ask you?
I know everything.
Nope. Okay. So, we got an extra lore for talking to him. Learned way more about the world. Kind of some of the subsects of the world. For some reason my keyboard's not working. Let's pop back in there. Okay. That would have been trouble in a fight where pausing is very important. So we finished our conversation with Tunon. We gained a lot of his wrath. He is not happy with us because I really wanted him to take off his mask. I just felt like, we could see his face and that would be awesome. But no, he was a jerk and he kept getting angry. And I don't understand why. And he kicked me out. And then we kind of saw Barrick get mad at me, talked to Verse about her relationship with Barrick, and Barrick chimed into that, and then dug into Lantry, figured out a lot of what he is, and kind of the sadness of losing the library and that group of mages, and how devastating that is, and what a setback that is. But we also learned that Lantry was working with the Arcana Secrets, working with the Voices of Nayrat, which who would have guessed, but is pretty cool little detail. Yeah, so that's it for this episode. Please come back tomorrow for another edition of Pete Plays Tyranny. I'm Pete. In the meantime, check out Mandate Radio where I've been talking about this game, and then head on over to Baasvik Reviews and look at that. And for all our content, all in one place, you can go to indiegamestriple.com. That's where everything is posted. And thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and please come back. I like you guys. You're not bad people. So, okay, goodbye. See you tomorrow.